Um, uh, Good afternoon, Council, and thanks for hearing me today. I'm representing the West End Residents Association, and WERA has long supported an initiative to reduce the parking requirements. We believe the existing parking requirements are a significant barrier to affordable housing and also other city sustainable initiatives. City parking policy has a direct impact on the supply of parking and therefore its costs. And these costs have a significant impact on the transportation choices that people make. And parking that's underpriced is an incentive and a subsidy to drive, instead of the city priorities of walking, cycling, and transit. In 2007, Colliers International noted that Vancouver has underpriced commercial parking by Canadian standards. And it noted a median monthly rate of $209 for Vancouver versus Calgary at $350 and Toronto at $302. We also believe the residential parking costs are underpriced, as the previous speaker spoke, and he very adequately described how residential parking is underpriced. So this supports the suggestion we have overcapacity. Now, in the report before you, it's recommending a cap of 34,000. And this is a result of the 1997 Transportation Plan, which was noted by staff. Now, we would suggest that circumstances have changed considerably since 1997. The dual impacts of climate change and peak oil are forcing us to re-examine our transportation choices and our commuting patterns. Downtown commuters that use a car have dropped to less than 50% and are continuing to trend downwards. The downtown population has doubled since the 1980s. And residents' priorities are different now than in the 1960s, where these existing parking regulations were born from. Now, downtown residents, the biggest concern is affordable housing and also transportation choices. So WERA believes that a commuter parking cap of 34,000 is probably too high and that this should be reduced further. Off-street parking is very expensive to build, okay? We've sort of talked about a $40,000 cost per stall. Think about it, $40,000 per unit that's forced on us, forced on property developers, and then that is paid by the resident. Similar costs also impact new commercial development, so this drives up the cost for commercial developments. WERA believes that the existing parking requirements are a factor that have encouraged developers to build only luxury condominiums instead of rental, nonprofit, and cooperative housing, because these are significant costs for alternative types of housing. And this focus over the last 30 years is now threatening the existing affordable rental housing in the West End, and it's changing the whole demographics of the West End. Now, WERA does support the city recommendation to now set a maximum of 1 parking spot per residential unit, though I do want to make the comment we're a bit confused at is it really 1 spot maximum, because when we look at the table on page 7, there seems to be some contradictions on that. And we also support the other recommendations to standardize the parking requirements across the downtown peninsula. We think that makes a lot of sense. And we also encourage the unbundling of the parking from the housing unit. And we would also suggest that that unbundling could also work in both residential and commercial, as the previous speaker also mentioned that. WERA encourages the city to consider developments with no minimum parking requirement for both commercial and residential. As you know, in the report, city staff have recommended a minimum parking requirement of 0.42 spaces per residential unit. And like I said, we would advocate a 0 minimum. Parking costs to build to the minimum works out to about $17,000 per unit based on the 40,000, or it would cost almost $2 million to do a 100-unit apartment building. So think about that, $2 million to build just to the minimum for a 100-unit apartment building, okay? Minimum parking requirements discourage developing existing buildings. Complying with minimum parking requirements are frequently a factor in the demolition of heritage buildings and even heritage trees. WERA believes the city needs to review further the parking in lieu strategy. WERA suggests this should be part of a strategy to manage the full opportunity costs of the $40,000 that would be invested in each parking spot. Developers then would be offered favorable options for payment in lieu, okay, to provide reduced parking. So think about that. If that $2 million on that 100 unit building, that could buy, say as an example, 4 diesel buses as an opportunity cost. The staff report does not address the role of Easy Park in the downtown parking strategy. Can Easy Park's mandate be reviewed to include housing? Can Easy Park transition to Easy Home? In summary, WERA supports the changes of the parking policy recommended by staff. This is a significant shift in direction. Maybe we can go further.